Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk today. The topic is clubbing. This is the name of my essay this week. The hangover always hurts. And it's about the environment on the internet these days, and this sort of collective fight or flight that we're all experiencing. And, if you don't spend a lot of time on social media, first of all, congratulations. If you have, if there are things that you're doing in your world, like I write, and I have this podcast, and I have a whole yoga community as well, global yoga community. Along with writing, I've been teaching yoga for the last, 30 plus years. And I have a site with members all over the globe, which is, just one of the great joys in my life. And certainly, if you had asked me when I was a kid, whether I would be using the internet to connect with people, I certainly would not have said yes. And so it's been a real, joy and shock for me to find myself using these tools as a way to meet people, to converse with people, to connect with people that I probably never would have met any other way. It's one of the great benefits of the internet is being able to, to have conversations with people on the other side of the globe, or to get to understand somebody else's perspective, or where they're coming from, or how things are for them. I have had over the years, countless conversations with people that I likely never would have crossed paths with any other way. So I'm certainly someone who appreciates all the best aspects of the internet and of this, even just being able to have this talk. Without people listening, it's just me speaking into the abyss, right? If I were to be writing and nobody was reading, then I'm just writing into the void. Or, if I were to teach yoga and nobody was there to practice, community is everything. And being able to reach out to people who are struggling, or who feel alone, or who are feeling alienated or confused or overwhelmed. That's really why I do everything that I do. Whenever I am writing or teaching or having a conversation, this conversation, any conversation, that is always underneath everything that I'm saying, teaching, writing, is just this desire to extend a hand in the dark, that kind of idea, to throw up a flare in case anyone out there is feeling alone or is feeling scared. And it is a really difficult time in the world, and this is not new work for me. This is really what I've been doing since 2004 is when I started to strap an iPod to my arm and record classes that I was teaching live from Santa Monica. And I had a very simple site at that time, one-page site where people could make I called it audio downloads by donation. So I would just record the audio from a class that I had taught. I would clean up the sound, and I would put it on the site, and people could donate. And then that way, if I had students who were local to Santa Monica who were traveling, they could like take the class along with them or join from anywhere. And they didn't need the visual because they had been practicing so long. That's how it began. That's how it all began for me, with like this using the internet in these ways. In 2009, I opened a yoga studio in Santa Monica, in downtown Santa Monica, brick and mortar studio. And because the audio downloads had been so popular, which I didn't say, that really surprised me. So I'll just track back to 2004 for a minute. To my shock, people were downloading, a lot. And I never really anticipated that. I put them up there as sort of an experiment, and it took off, and I realized, wow, there is a desire for this. And so in 2009, when I opened the brick and mortar studio, one of the things that my business partner at the time, I don't have a business partner anymore, but at the time, we were talking about is streaming classes live. And I know everyone now is like on the internet, and there are, multiple yoga and wellness websites out there. But at the time, we were like in the first three to start doing that. And so we had 4 cameras in the studio, and I would strap a mic pack on, and we would film live classes, and we started putting them out there. And the first time we did it, I was really kind of nervous because I just wasn't used to teaching with a mic pack and cameras, even though the cameras were like in boxes and pretty, they were like openly hidden in the room. Everyone knew that was happening, of course. But I was shocked because I got emails from people in Japan and the south of France and like all over, saying that they had joined this class and how amazing it was, and there's no studio near me, and thank you so much. This was, and so I realized the power that is there, and available when you use the internet and put yourself out there. And it was, so incredibly gratifying and shocking to me at the time. And that's kind of how it began. That was back in 2009, 2010. It took a year to kind of beta test and figure out how to do it all. And that's something I've been doing since then, along with when I opened the studio. In 2009, I started blogging. That's back in the days when we blogged. We don't blog anymore. Now we write personal essays. But at the time, we were blogging, right? So I started a blog, and I started it on the Facebook page for the studio, for Yogis Anonymous. And I didn't follow any of the rules. They're social media rules where you got 3 seconds to grab someone's attention. And, I read all the books and everything because I was new to that. And I tried to follow those rules for a while, and it was absolutely miserable for me. Like, I didn't want to be posting photoshopped pictures of cats in lotus pose, saying like, whatever, happy meow mistake or whatever. Like, that did not speak to me. So after not a very long while, I just started to write. And I started to write about life, really, and how challenging it is to be a human being sometimes, and the way that this inward pain that we can experience can really lead to outward trouble. And that is, if I had to boil down my core belief into like one sentence, that would be it. That like our inward pain is going to lead to outward difficulty if we don't deal with it and face it and wrangle it and work through it. And everyone has their stuff, and it's not a level playing field. And my personal belief is that childhood wounds are a really good place to start because the whole system is forming at that point, right? The motherboard is being installed. And I don't use the word motherboard lightly. Like, the buttons are being, they're being placed. And so if you have wounds from your childhood and you don't, look at them and figure out like what is happening with you or what it is that you learned as you were growing, it's probably going to wreak havoc in your life when you go out into the world and start trying to form your like more grown-up relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, all of the above. And so when I'm teaching, I'm always trying to offer the tools, the ideas, um, the practices that really work for me as far as like calming my nervous system and trying to look at myself honestly, to really understand. And that's part of the yoga practice, but it's part of any meaningful, and I even hesitate to use this word because it's so loaded these days, but any meaningful spiritual practice, right? Any practice, let's say, that makes you feel like your most true self, that is going to be at the core of it, is just knowing yourself, right? Understanding yourself. What is driving me? Is there fear driving me? Is there doubt, like massive self-doubt? Do I really question my worth? Were the things that I was taught as I was forming and growing, were they true? Were they real? Are they helping me as a citizen of the world? Like when I go out into the world, I'm no longer just a member of this family. Now I'm a member of the collective family. And are the things that I was taught, the values I was taught, the ideas that I was, are they serving me? Are they true? Can I step back and question some of those things and figure out what I think as a living, breathing human being who's now been out in the world for a while? Do those things that I was taught, do they ring true? Do they make sense? Do they feel right in my gut? And for most people, the answer is like not everything. Some of the things I learned along the way maybe aren't really helping me, and maybe they aren't true. And maybe I need to re-examine and put on my critical thinking hat and just like figure some things out. Certainly that has been my experience along the way. There were a lot of things that I learned, both because they were, specifically taught to me, and also because I learned by just being in an environment what was okay and what was not okay, what was acceptable, what was not acceptable. All that stuff I really had to call into question and figure out. I've talked about this a lot. I've written about it a lot. But in my personal world, I grew up in an alcoholic household. In one house, my parents were divorced, and in the other, there was a lot of secret keeping around infidelity with my dad, and that involved lying to people. And I was unfortunately like brought into that. And so I learned a lot of things. He taught me to lie in order to spare people's feelings, that you could just go do whatever you wanted to do and whatever you were driven to do. And as long as you didn't get caught, these are the things that I was absorbing as I was watching. And that, his ideas were like, this whole thing of like wanting to be free and struggling to commit, and he made himself the victim of all of that, when really is like, then don't get married. It's like not that common. If you don't want to commit, then don't commit. But like, committing and then lying and cheating and running around and bringing your kid along for the ride, that's not it. So there were a lot of things I had to kind of unravel. And at my mother's house, it was other stuff. It was her drinking, and nobody would face it. Like, she would not admit there was a problem, and no one else would kind of get in the fire with me, as I got older, and say like, there's a serious problem here. And, or, hey, I'm scared. Like, things are happening when she comes home after drinking all night, and no one is helping me, and it doesn't feel okay. And just nobody would acknowledge there was an issue. And so there's a lot of stuff for me personally. You have your own things, I don't know. I mean, some of you I know, and a lot of you I don't, what your childhood stuff is. But in order for me to have a life, an internal life that felt good and calm and peaceful, I had to do a lot of like unraveling and working through things and rewiring my own system. And it took years. It takes years to set up the system, and it takes years to rewire. And so that's been like my life's work, not just for myself, but for anyone who is reading what I'm writing or practicing with me or in any other way, I have found so much relief, through these ideas that I try to share or these practices that I share. That stuff has brought me so much relief and so much peace and so much joy that of course I want to share all that stuff because I'm not a zealot. I don't think the ways that it's worked for me necessarily would work for everyone, but I have found over the last 30 years that a lot of this stuff is really helpful to a lot of people, So that is where I'm coming from all the time. And the world right now is, and always, okay, I am not a geopolitical expert. I am a yoga teacher and I am a writer and I am a mom and I'm a person in this world. I have studied world history. I do think that the best way to kind of not repeat mistakes we've made in the past is to study the past, but I am not a geopolitical expert, and that is not where I am. That's not my expertise. My expertise is how do we heal? How do we heal as individual human beings so that when we go out into the world, what we are offering is the best that we've got. And 100%, to my bones, I just believe we are one people on one planet, and we're just not getting the memo, of how to coexist here peacefully, respectfully, kindly, with compassion, with tolerance, with joy, with understanding. That is where I'm coming from. So yes, if I look around and I see things that are devastating, of course it affects me. I find myself, and this is not just words I'm saying, I literally find myself in tears multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. And my family would back me up. The people who live in the house with me would tell you there are times that I am seeing things or I am reading things or I'm trying to share something and I cannot get through it because I am now overwhelmed with feeling about what I am seeing and the inability to finish a sentence because I'm so devastated and heartbroken at the ways that we are treating each other. There is no lack of feeling on my part. And not only is there no lack of feeling, I'm always looking for what action can I take? If I feel devastated about what I'm seeing, what small thing can I do to help? Is there anything? Is there anything I can do? Can I send an email? Can I sign a petition? Can I make a donation? What can I do? Is there anything at all that I can personally do to try to just move the needle toward peace any amount? That's always on my mind and in my daily life, because we don't have a lot of time. We have, maybe if we're lucky, I don't know, my dad lived to be 96. And he took really good care of his physical health for his whole life. And he got 96 years out of his body. So maybe we, if we're really lucky, we get, and even if you take really good care of yourself, there's no guarantee. There's genetics, there's all kinds of things, there's stress, but bottom line, we don't last a very long time as human beings. And so for me, it's while I'm here, I want to love my heart out. I want to make sure that I've given everything I possibly have to make this world a better place for everyone in it and for my kids and my, maybe one day I'll have grandkids and then not I'm always trying to think about what I can possibly do and then taking action. So, if you're ever wondering how I feel about something or what I'm doing, just ask. Shoot me an email, send me a message. I try to make myself really easy to find. And anyone who has tried has found that to be the case. I have had so many conversations with people over the last few months about everything that we're seeing right now, which is so painful on all sides. somebody earlier this week that I love and I've known for a long time questioned like why I'm not being more specifically outspoken about world events right now. And so that's part of what I wanted to talk about today. What I am experiencing and what I have seen time and time again, and believe me, again, I'm not new to this, and I've been using social media platforms for a long time, and I started to talk about the blog on the Facebook page, which at the time that I began it, which was in 2010, but about a year after the studio opened, I started blogging, and I was writing about all this stuff that I'm talking about right now, just like how hard it can be to be a human being in a violent and unpredictable world a lot of the time, in a world where people are unspeakably cruel to each other, like just a lot of the time, and have been, and have been for all of history. World people who are like historians will tell you we have less war on the planet now than we ever have before. It's hard to believe. Like it's really hard to, it's hard to believe that that's true. But I haven't lived in any other time. I've only lived in this time as far as I know. I've only lived in this time, in my conscious awareness. And I don't have a way, there is no live stream for 200 years ago. Like we only have what we have right now, and we have the internet. And this is the other side of the internet, is that it's like everything is in our faces all the time in a way that it never has been before. And it does have an impact on people. It has a huge impact on people's nervous systems and the way that they're feeling as they're going through the day. And, here in this country, but not just in this country, it's very polarized. Everything is polarizing. So you say something and people scream at you. You could say what feels to you like the most obvious thing in the world, like, you know what? Like we should be kind to one another. We should be tolerant. If someone is doing something and it isn't hurting you, just move along, and people scream at you. It's like, what about the people who, you can't say anything right now because everybody's nervous systems are shot. They're shot. Everyone is done. Everyone is in fight or flight on the internet. And so unless you're posting, just the most, I don't even know what, you're going to get attacked, and I have used so what ended up happening, I'm blogging. This is back in the day when Facebook did not the algorithm didn't hide your posts. You didn't have to pay to boost things. This was 2010, 2009, 2010. And so I was blogging and I was writing about all of these things: loss, heartache, confusion, overwhelm, betrayal, like just all the human stuff that we all go through. And it took off, and there are 175,000 people on the page now, which is, bigger than a lot of pages and smaller than a lot of pages, but it's not an insignificant number of people. And then there are the other platforms. So I had a friend of mine who asked me, why aren't you using your platforms in a more outspoken way? I have used all of my platforms, and I've been very outspoken about all kinds of things over the years. We're in a different place right now. When you have a community of people, you have to realize that you have a community of people, meaning you have people from all different cultural backgrounds, different religions, different socioeconomic situations, different everything. And if you have decided that this community that you've built is your responsibility, that you owe that community something, then that means you owe the entire community your care and your patience and your compassion, even when it's really hard, even when you disagree. The call is to not scream at people who disagree with you. And instead, if you are leading a community, to try to extend the benefit of the doubt, to say to yourself, if I grew up where that person grew up, and I grew up in that person's family, and I was taught the things that that person is taught, that would be me. I would be them. To really try to grasp that and to if you scream at people, you lose them. They just go away. And then you're talking to an echo chamber of all the people who agree with you. That's one way to do it. But that's not the way I want to do it. It doesn't speak to me, and I don't see how it helps to be screaming at people on the internet. I don't think it saves anyone's lives. I don't, this whole thing, well, you're raising awareness. Everyone's aware. Believe me when I tell you, everyone is aware because everyone's on the internet and it's in our faces all the time. So that, I am here my self-appointed job is to try to help people come back to just their best nature, their best, most open, loving, compassionate, kind, tolerant, patient nature. Because my belief is when people are in that mind space and that heart space and that everything space, they're not going to do harm. Like when I am in my most loving, open, spacious mindset, and that's the energy that's moving through my body, I could not hurt another person because I can see, and when I'm in that space, if somebody is screaming into the void, it's because they're in pain. They're in pain. They're not okay. So I'm not going to scream back and bash them over the head. I'm going to try to help. The thing is right now, even when you try to help on the internet, you get bashed in the head. And that's the truth, and I've experienced it myself over and over again. And I experienced it this last week. I expressed sadness about something, which I feel really, if we're in our best selves, we would all say it's incredibly sad. And I was bashed over the head. It's fine. I'm here. I survived. It's fine. But that's the environment that we're in, where like you can't even express just the most basic, like, my heart goes out to this person, because there's somebody there ready to attack, I mean, I'm still doing it. I'm still expressing my sadness about the state of the world. Of course, this is not the world that I want for any of us, not for my children, not for your children, but not for any of us. This is not it. We don't want our children anywhere feeling scared or unsafe or being unsafe. Like, that's not it. So I'm always coming from that place. And I, looking at things the way that I am, and I'm always trying to look at them. I was writing about when I was 3 years old, and I have such a strong memory of this. And there are no photographs. Sometimes you're remembering things from your childhood because you've seen pictures, but there are no pictures of this. I just remember being at the Jersey Shore, and my nanny, my mother's mother, she had a little cottage at the Jersey Shore, and that's where we would go in the summers. And it was a few blocks from the amusement park, and the best times in my childhood are from then. I mean, I have just the most visceral memories of like being at the Jersey Shore and the sand in my feet and the sound of the seagulls and the waves rolling in and the waves rolling out and the smell of the boardwalk and the amusement park and the sounds at the amusement park. And there's no coincidence that I live near the Santa Monica Pier. I'm near that because that is soothing to me, all of that. And so I was at the amusement park with my nanny, and that's what I call my grandmother, and her boyfriend. And my nanny and I were on the Ferris wheel, and there was a blackout. And, I don't know if you're like, for me as a 70s kid, I was little in the 70s, I was born in 1971. And I don't think I don't know, maybe this was just a thing that happened at the Jersey Shore a lot. Maybe it happened there, but I remember even in New York City as a little kid, we would have like blackouts once in a while. It wasn't common, but it would happen once in a while where just all the lights would go out, all the appliances would go off, and you have to go find your candles, right? So anyway, it was at the amusement park. We were on the Ferris wheel. We got right to the top of the Ferris wheel, and there was a blackout. And so we were just up there, suspended. And when a Ferris wheel stops, you probably experienced this, the car starts to get moved by the wind. And when you're on the beach, there's wind. It was not a particularly sunny day. So anyway, we're up there, and the Ferris wheel car that we're in is like, it's swaying back and forth pretty noticeably in the wind. And my grandmother, she just started reassuring me right away. She was just amazing. She was like the most loving, just the most loving person you could ever hope to meet, and kind. And she just loved me, like my experience of being fully loved is thanks to her. And also my aunt and uncle were extremely Italian, like loving, just like grab you, hug you, kiss your face, all that, those kind of people. My mom wasn't. It's very interesting that she grew up in that environment, but she was not a touchy-feely person. She was not, she wasn't that. She wasn't really affectionate with me, and she wasn't verbally, there was not a lot of praise. It's very interesting for me to like think about all of that and how that happens, right? But they were. And so I think that I knew growing up that that's what that feels like, to be really loved, and to be made to feel safe in this world. And she was my person, she was my person. And so she just kind of like pulled me right up next to her and told me everything was okay. We would be moving again soon, and then told me to like look at the ocean and look at the white caps. And she was explaining to me how the wind is moving the ocean too, not just us, right? Up here moving in the Ferris wheel, and look at the sand, and you'll see like the ripples in the sand, and that's also the wind. And people's hair blow, like the wind is blowing on everyone, the seagulls flying on the wind, and how they fly with the wind. And she was just explaining all of that to me, and I just remember not being at all scared, because I knew I was with her, and everything was going to be okay. And it was, after some amount of time, the Ferris wheel started moving again. But we were also talking about like how everybody on the boardwalk and the beach looked like ants. They're so tiny. And that it stayed with me. It stayed with me, that idea that like, from whatever, 1,000 feet up, everybody looks tiny and the same, and that's really how it is. Like, we're just here on this planet, and we're taught whatever we're taught, and we're thinking whatever we're thinking, and we're experiencing what we're experiencing. We're trying to make sense of things. We definitely don't get everything right, and sometimes we make a mess of it. And usually if there's violence, there's fear underneath that. There's pain underneath it. There's desperation, like, I really don't believe that we enter this world and we're violent. I think we enter the world and we need someone there to keep us warm, and to comfort us, and to feed us, and to make sure we have shelter. Like, we need all those things. And it's not a scientific study. I have 2 kids. It's only 2. But I really feel our best nature when we arrive here is curiosity, love, just openness, acceptance. We're just moving through the world, and we're like, oh, like, how does this all work? And what am I doing here? And for the first little while, we don't even know that we're like separate entities. We think we're like part of our mothers. It's like, it's so interesting to grow in this world, and to be on this planet, and to be a human being. And I've always found it fascinating. I've always found the human experience and the way that people grow. Ram Dass has that beautiful quote, I'm just paraphrasing, about trees in the forest. Like, we go to the forest and we look at the trees, and some of them are bent one way and the other because that's how they had to grow to like reach toward the light. And we don't sit in a forest and say, oh, that tree would be more beautiful if it wasn't bent in that way. We just sit there and like, we're awed by all the beauty, and that, we should treat people that way as well, and understand if somebody is doing things that are hard to understand, or, we can't relate, that that's probably, they're either in the process of growing toward the light, or like something created that, and to just try to extend some compassion, and some patience. But that's just not the world that we're in right now. And I have not found social media to be the best place to talk about, a lot of the things that break my heart all the time, because I don't think it helps anyone for people to scream at each other. I don't. I think it helps when people come back to that true nature and to the best in themselves, and then naturally want to help in whatever small ways they can. And there's that saying that, like, no one can do everything, but all of us can do something. And I don't know what the point is of having a spiritual practice if it doesn't then make you want to go out in the world and try to help. If it's just like for your own benefit, so then you can go and have your like kombucha, I don't know. It's like, for me, that does not resonate. I feel like something happened there. And I've had people, when I do, use my platforms to talk, and I'm still doing that, by the way. It's not like I'm, not doing that. It's just, I'm not doing it to the degree that some people want me to do it. And I'm not doing it in a way that's going to create more pain for people right now. I don't think it helps. I don't think you change minds and hearts. I don't think that's the environment that we're in. I think that it is like trying to talk to someone who's in the middle of like a fight or flight response. It's not a good use of your time and energy. And if you feel in your heart that something is not okay in the world, that you feel compelled to try to help in any direction, of course, ideally and hopefully, and certainly from my perspective, your practice is, it's a natural extension that you're going to try to do something, anything, and my perspective has always been that if we want the world to be a more peaceful and compassionate place, got to start with the world that's happening inside each one of us. And if you find yourself being, like easily enraged by things, someone says something or does something, you're just instant rage, right? That's probably a good thing to really look at, because you don't want to set yourself up to have your inner state dependent upon what is happening around you. You don't want to be a victim of circumstance. You really want to at least take responsibility for your own inner environment and try to make it as kind and peaceful as you can, and trust that if you do that, if you spend some time doing that, it's just, we're always going to spread what we're filled with, and I do think that not only does it not help when people scream at each other on the internet, I think it does a lot of damage. And I've experienced it myself. And I have had so many things happen, that I don't really talk about, because it's fine. It's part of what happens when you do extend yourself online, when you do have a presence, when you do try to reach people. Things are going to happen. I've had my home address posted online. I've had threats. I've had all kinds of things go down. I have children. I'm not the only one at my home address. Like, there's a lot of things that have happened along the way that are incredibly disappointing and scary and, hard to figure out how to manage. And that's fine. Like, that's for me to figure out as I go. But it's not the damage that is done collectively when people get online and they say something, especially if they're trying to say something like, I'm scared right now, or I'm confused, or I don't know exactly what to do or how to feel, and people scream at them, it's like, it doesn't make anybody feel good. And I was talking about this idea of clubbing each other over the head, and how we've been doing that since, I was saying like Homo erectus first stood up. Like it's, the first time we got on 2 feet, that is when we had our hands free. And, I look, human beings can be incredibly violent. And if you look at the history, a lot of the time we just take what we want and that's it. We take what we want, we take it by force, and that's it. And you can't look at even the history in this country and not recognize that. I mean, you can if you want to, but I mean, it's right there. It's just right there. It's like it's built in. And I was saying in the essay this week that the Pledge of Allegiance right now feels like America's Tinder profile. It's like, I'm going to say this is who I am because it sounds good. And I'd like to think this is who I am. And then if you spend some time with me, you're going to see my actions don't align with my bio. And that, that's a like, if you take it back to the individual level, I'm always like interested in whatever my bio is it really close to who I am as a person? Like, would my kids read my bio and be like, yeah, that's right. Like, I live with you. You're my mom, and that bio that's right. That's who you are. Like, if there's a big distance between your bio and how you're being in the world, that's the space where you have work to do. All of us, not you, the collective you, me, all of us, right? If there's distance between who I say I am and who I'm being, that's where I've got to do some work. And so, if someone that I care about calls my integrity into question, someone who knows me, I'm taking that really seriously. I am not like gonna get defensive, and I'm gonna really take that in and be like, ooh, wait a minute. Like, I know why I'm doing things the way that I'm doing them, but let me just pause and reassess, and think really carefully about whether the conclusions that I've come to are correct or not, whether they're serving the highest good for my community or not. And if not, like, let me really look at that, make sure it's not my own personal fear driving me, or, like that I've really thought this through. And that happened this week. And I had to, I really did. I spent the day kind of just thinking, all right, well, let me just reassess here and think about how I am using the reach that I have. And if it does feel like I'm, if it feels ethically correct to me and morally correct to me and like the best that I can possibly do. And it does, this is not something I have taken lightly ever. I am so grateful for the community that I have and for people who are interested in what I have to say or the things that I write or when I'm teaching or who want to join me, for anything. Like, I do not take that lightly at all. It is such a gift in my life that I really am always thinking about how can I show up for everyone, and what are my gifts, and what are the things that have really helped me, and how do I share those in the best possible way. So I'm certainly living that, and there is no dearth of feeling on my part at all. In fact, it's the opposite of that. It's been this time in life right now, and you may or may not relate to this depending on your age. I have never felt more vulnerable than I do these days. I mean, I can't remember. I think maybe in middle school I felt like incredibly vulnerable, but it was different. Everybody feels fragile and like insecure and like they're trying to make sense of things in the world. But I do feel some part of my brain kind of like in that same space of I think it's a lot of things that I was writing about in the essay, like losing my parents over the last few years, and my mother in particular. It was so traumatic. I lost her. She got ALS, and I didn't lose her. It took her. It took her. It took her by storm, and it took her away. Like it ravaged her, and it was traumatic to watch that happen, and to be powerless to stop it, and to try to throw myself in front of that train and just help her any way I could. It was brutal. And my dad I lost to old age over the summer, and I've had my own just couple of health scares. I'm totally fine, but I've had a couple of things, and my dog is getting old. Like there's just a lot of my son, who's 17, is going to college in September, and I don't know where he's going yet. We don't know, and so there's all of that unknown. And I'm so happy for him, and I'm so excited for him. But it's 17 years of having him in the house, and like that chapter's coming to a close, and there's going to be a new chapter, and it's going to be beautiful, and I'm not confused about that, but I still am mourning, so there's a lot of that going on, and just a lot of really feeling the fragility of life, and knowing that I'm in my middle years, right? I just turned 53, and it's like I'm in my middle. I'm right in the middle of the story, and I know I don't have forever, and I want to be so, I don't want to miss that. Like, I really want to take care of my time and energy and try to show up in the world in the most loving way that I can, and make the biggest impact that I can in that way, for whatever time I have left. And I don't want to pretend that I have endless time. I don't. None of us do, And I'm really heartbroken at the state of the world. Deeply. I mean, beyond, I'm beside myself with the ways that we are treating each other, and the absolute lack of compassion when people are scared. Like, even if it doesn't make any sense to you, or even if you think their fear is unjust, I can't just stop. If there's a human being expressing fear, or grief, or confusion, or sadness, or just be kind, it's not that hard. Just be kind. And maybe just say to yourself, okay, I come at this from a totally different point of view, but clearly this person is in a lot of pain. So let me, if nothing else, if I can't extend compassion, at least let me not bash them over the head. I don't know. Is that so much to ask? Just to not pull out your club and bam, bash someone over the head? Could we not agree to that? Right? Let's not engage in violence, because it's not going to save a life. It is not going to save a life. It's just, that is not it. And so that's where I'm coming from, and that's where I've been coming from. And that is why I'm using the reach that I have to keep talking about, coming back to center and trying to calm your nervous system, and trying to remind yourself that we're all just human beings here. We're doing the best that we can. We don't get a lot of time. Yes, when you see something that is, feels unjust to you, or not right, or 1,000% not okay, try to do something. Yeah. And if you're not sure what to do, ask people you trust, how are you facing this, or what are you doing, or how do you feel, or how are you getting through the day right now? Ask, but don't attack. Don't attack, and try to extend a little bit of grace to people. Not everybody knows what to do right now. People with, giant platforms way bigger than mine don't know what to do right now, or how to help, or, it's everyone's trying to figure out. And I'm not excusing, listen, there are a lot of people who are saying things, and I'm just, you would have been better being quiet. That is not going to be helpful, So it's rough right now to know how to serve, to know how to help, to know how to make any kind of a difference, but try to extend the benefit of the doubt to people, that you go to for comfort, that they probably are trying to figure it out. I certainly have been. And I've certainly been doing the best that I know how to do. And, in case you are like wonder, I mean, I've had so many one-on-one conversations with people because that's always, again, going back to my core belief. I really think the way we make the world a better place is one person at a time. Um, that's all I know to do. And I was talking about Mr. Rogers because after my grandmother died, that is who I turned to. I feel like my grandmother and Mr. Rogers kind of raised me as far as the kind of person that I am. I used to just sit and listen to him talk, and it was like the one thing as a kid that made me feel like maybe possibly I'm going to be okay, because there's one person saying things that make sense to me and telling me it's okay to be scared and telling me it's okay to be sad and telling me it's okay to be confused. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do for people, is just say it's okay. It's okay if you're feeling despair. Like, to me, if you're not feeling despair right now, you're not paying attention. You're not awake. You're not seeing what's going on in the world, And sleeping through it isn't it either. So that, I really hope that this is at least, maybe giving people some food for thought. And because so much of us do connect on the internet, which we could talk about, like how good or not good that is. Like, I definitely think the internet is something that you can use as a tool for good, or it can be like a tool of just utter mental destruction. It can be, if you're careful and you're using it mindfully and you're using it in what I would consider like a positive and helpful way, it can be beautiful. I read so many beautiful things because of the internet, like essays and things I might not see otherwise. I see art, and I see, there's just things like you can follow people who inspire you and who have good things to say. And then there's also just a lot of violence, verbal and emotional, written. I'm anonymous. I'm behind a screen, so I can just lash out. And it is people's pain. It is their fear. It is their rage. It's understandable, but I do think it has an impact. And this was the last thing that I wanted to just touch on, is that, I was saying this week, when that happens, when I have experienced that, and I've experienced it a lot. I mean, anytime I'm outspoken about anything, I get bashed on the head, and so it's okay. I'm like somewhat used to it, but it's exhausting and it does hurt. It does. It hurts, and I'm not centering myself here. I'm just sharing with you, for all of us. I think anyone who experiences that, even if it's a short interaction of just being bashed on the head, it hurts, right? It makes you feel like the world isn't a safe place. There's no hope for humanity. People are so against each other. You can't even have a conversation. Everything is upside down. Like, it puts you in a really hopeless frame of mind if you're interacting in that way, if you're engaging in that way. And so I would just encourage all of you to just don't engage with content that is going to burn your nervous system out further, because you can't help anyone if you're like absolutely done. If you've got nothing in the tank, you're not going to be able to help anyone. It's not saving lives to burn out your nervous system. That's not it. Taking some action and putting your compassion and your pain and your empathy and your heartbreak to good use and trying to do something, that's the stuff. But screaming at people on the internet isn't it. And it's just going to burn you out too. So I would just, caution you to just try to be really mindful about what you are. There's something in yoga, like when you get on your mat, called pratyahara, which means withdrawal of the senses, and you're using the focal points and the breath, the sound of your own breathing and the feel of your own breathing and sensation. That's why sensation-based practices are so essential right now, in my opinion, because they bring you back to the present moment. They bring you back into your body. They you start breathing instead of just like shallow chest breathing, which is what most people do when their nervous systems are shot and their adrenal glands are shot, from all the cortisol and stress and lack of sleep and all of that stuff. People start chest breathing, and when you start to breathe like into your belly and it calms your nervous system and it brings you back to center. It reminds you that like there's so much beauty, honestly, even in the midst of all of this heartache and devastation. There's also so much beauty. There are so many people who care, and there's so much art in each of us, and like there's so much art in the world, and just to not forget that, to make sure you're directing your attention to that too, and to go and like get the sun on your face. I mean, also sunscreen, like seriously. There's a lot of stuff going on the internet that is just, I mean, good sunscreen, but like, okay, I'm off on a tangent. There's just a lot of really wild information on the internet right now. So again, just trying to use your critical thinking and, every summer I always post the sunscreens that are healthy, clean, like not terrible ingredients in them, but okay, I'm so on a tangent right now, but it's because I don't want you to get skin cancer. Like just to really try to use your time wisely, and to despair makes it's a natural, if you are paying attention, yes, you're going to feel that, but also to fill your tank with like the beauty of being here and reminding yourself that yes, we're making a mess of it. Yes, we're making a mess of it, but it's still amazing to wake up on a spinning planet in a solar system, and it, in a universe, like it's wild, it's wild and amazing. And I mean, there's so much to see and read and absorb that is stunning and amazing, and I don't want you to miss it, because you're in a puddle of despair. Like, come back to center, get back in your body, breathe, like just look at the wind moving the trees around, look at all the different shades of green there are. Like, read something that inspires you, a beautiful book or a piece of music, listen to a piece of music, or look at paint. Like, just don't let it all be dark, like pull some light in when you need to, and you probably need to all the time right now. So yeah, I'm all about trying to be the light, but sometimes it's really hard. So thank you so much for joining me for this talk. I hope that it was helpful. I am very available if you need support or you want to have like further conversation. You know where I am, I hope, at this point. And thank you for joining me. And I don't take it lightly. And I'm just sending so much love to everyone. So much love. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.